You're welcome. Good evening. It is 7 o'clock and I'll call the meeting to order. We do have quorum of council. At this time, I'm looking for approval of the agenda. Councilor Cox.
I move that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Campbell. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. At this time, I would like to welcome our delegation for this evening. Just a reminder to please activate your microphone when you wish to speak so that it can be heard over the recording.
Good evening, Your Worship, council members. Thank you once again for having us this evening. Brought Constable Frisbee, provided a bio there in last month's report, but I'll just give her a few moments to introduce herself and let her say hello.
Good evening, Your Worship and council members. Good evening, Your Worship and council members. As Sergeant Peter said, I'm Constable Jessica Frisbee. I'm new to town. Been here about a month now. Before this, I came out of depot, and I was a wild firefighter and volunteer structural firefighter before coming here.
Welcome.
We'll put her on the spot too much tonight, maybe next meeting. We'll briefly go through the December report, also which happens to be our year-end report. I'll just skip to our impaired driving initiative there. I kind of touched on it last month, but we had a successful weekend there, the Operation Gingerbread. So for those of you that aren't familiar, I think anybody probably involved, been in the territory for quite some time, but it's a yearly thing that's done by RCMP in G Division every year. It's an initiative, a road safety initiative that's done every year, targeting impaired driving primarily, but also aggressive driving, speeding, cell phone usage, things like that. So we're fortunate enough to have members from our traffic services unit come down for the weekend of the 11th and 13th, and combined with work from members of our own detachment. We did, if anybody was out on the road that weekend, I'm sure you visited maybe more than once. So we did some check stops, and then when traffic lightened up, we checked vehicles that were out on the road individually, and over the weekend there we checked approximately 150 vehicles. And again, I'm happy to report we had no impaired driving offenses noted, and we didn't use our roadside screening devices. We had no signs of impaired driving. Again, it's our traffic services unit that work there, so these are the guys that are out looking for this. So I think that's a good news to report that we didn't have any. We did again several warnings for some we call them non-moving offenses for things like expired driver's licenses, expired registration. We did issue a few tickets for insurance. That's kind of there's no warnings on insurance for obvious reasons. Generally, in those circumstances, we'll issue the ticket and then we'll give people 48 hours to provide proof of insurance, in which time we'll void the ticket. And then if they don't provide proof of insurance, then the ticket goes through. But all in all, a good weekend. The other notable occurrence, I guess, for the month, we had on December 22nd, there we had an incident where we had a reported a vehicle, a person sleeping inside a vehicle at the park just prior to it opening for the Christmas lights. And we attended and found the person inside the vehicle, sleeping with the vehicle running, showed signs of consumed alcohol. And we issued a roadside screening device demand, which was ultimately refused and resulted in a bit of a struggle. We attempted to place the individual under arrest, and he was eventually arrested and charged with failing to provide his breath sample, resisting arrest, and assaulting a police officer. So another impaired driving charge. We did also have another, I noted in the November report, I think we didn't include it in the November report. We had a member from our relief unit down in November, and we actually had an impaired driving charge in November that I didn't include in the November report because it was showing under the relief unit. So when I actually changed the numbers, we did have another impaired driving charge for November as well. For notable occurrences there for the month, again, I tried to list things that, to show some of the major incidents that we're involved in. On the next page there, our staffing cycle. So currently, this is for December, but our corporal and constable have arrived. So Corporal Stephanie Leduc and Constable Jordan Nordstrom have arrived. So as of today, we're fully staffed. They're actually moving trucks here today. So I anticipate that one or both of them will be here for next month's meeting to introduce themselves. So we're quite pleased to be back up to full strength again. And our numbers for our year-end numbers there on the second to last page, third to last page. I found it quite interesting that our numbers were almost exactly what they were for the previous year. So we ended up with 1,741 calls for service, and the previous year we were at 1,772. So that's pretty amazing that we're that close. Call volume wise, and again, as I mentioned previously, the numbers in terms of where we're at. Look down the column. There's not a whole lot of difference in terms of the difference in the types of calls that we're getting, except those disturbance calls are slightly down. And our prisoner count for the year ended up being 166 versus 238. And on the very last page, I just, as a curiosity, because our prisoner logs, we don't track names, but we've got a prisoner count going back quite a ways. So I just decided to do this out of curiosity. It's actually very interesting when you look at that graph on the last page. It shows going back to 2010, our prisoner count over the past 10 years, how much that has dropped. And anecdotally, if you talk to people that have been here, like Mike Foster, that have been here in the community for a long time, and talking about how many prisoners we used to have, and that supports that trend. So I would put that out there. That's a good thing that we've reduced our prisoner count. I don't think that's all our doing. I think that's there's other factors in play, but all in all, it's a good thing to have fewer people in custody each year. So yeah, that was more just an FYI. It was kind of going off, what I talking to people when I found. So I actually started digging into the numbers. That's what I came up with. And just one other thing I wanted to bring up. We had some informal reports that had come into us, and it was kind of third-hand information. But due to the sudden death that we were investigating last week, we had some additional members come down from Yellowknife, and we had some reports, like I say, third-hand information come in that people, they were using one. So we have a vehicle at the detachment that's on loan to us from Fort Chipewyan detachment. It's got Alberta license plate on the truck, but it's kept at the Fort Smith detachment. And so these members, I guess people didn't recognize them. They were in the community and they were driving the truck from Alberta. So people had saw them at the grocery stores, and they were in the grocery store and they weren't wearing a mask. So they thought that perhaps they were from Alberta and they were here and they weren't wearing a mask. So when I heard that, I called Dave Purchase and I talked to him and told him they're from Yellowknife. The truck is from Fort Smith. So I just want to put that out there that if, we do have members come in from another province, like in the case, like Constable Fritzy came in when she began her service here, or we have members moving in that are coming from outside, we follow the protocols that are put in place. So if there's any concerns or anything like that, I encourage people to call us and talk to us. But I I called Dave Purchase just to let him know that that was the case that was going on. So just in case there have been any reports or anything.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that clarification. Are there any questions or comments from council? Councilor MacArthur?
Thank you very much, and once again, welcome to Fort Smith. Constable Frisky, is it?
Yes, Council first.
Okay, thanks. And as that last report you had there about the officers from Yellowknife driving an Alberta plate, you can tell how much Fort Smith is really concerned about this stuff, and they don't care who you are, they'll turn you in. That's good. It's good the general public's doing that. On another couple things here, it's nice to see no impaired driving. That's awesome. People are finally getting the message. And my last thing is, in regards to young offenders, I feel sorry for you guys. Your hands are tied and there's not a damn thing you can do. They get out, you catch them, put them back in. It's a joke. I hope one day they come up with something, you catch them, and then they're gone for a while. So I feel sorry for you guys. You know, all those man hours trying to find these young offenders. Youth, that is, but there's nothing you can do with it. So hats off to the rest of your members for finally nabbing these guys. And I just wish there's something in the justice system that can be done.
Well, we're working within the system that we have, and we've got partners that are helping us, you know, with the problem. So we're not alone there. You know, we've got social services helping us out, and we've got probation that are helping us out. So we're dealing with the problem the best we can, and the Crown Prosecutor is working with us on it as well. So we're in you know, I can't speak too specifically to certain cases, but we're working towards solutions on it. It's not and you're right, it's not an easy solution to some of these problems. But yeah, we got to work within the framework that we're given, and there are solutions to some of these problems, and we're doing the best we can. I appreciate your comments, so thank you, and so do the members. And you're right, it is frustrating sometimes. It's a lot of repetition over and over and over, and some of the guys and gals get frustrated after a while with the same repetitiveness of the cycle. But like you say, that's the job.
Supplemental, Councilor MacArthur? Councilor Campbell?
Thank you.
Welcome to Fort Smith. Constable Pritzky. Okay, now that we have a full staffing up here, are we going to get more patrols in the evenings and nights, or?
Yes, absolutely, and that goes back to what I've been mentioning all along, and it's people reporting these minor property crimes, so we know exactly what we should be spending our time on and where. And so instead of aimlessly driving around, and we're focusing still on impaired driving, just because our numbers say that we didn't get any in the check stops, that's fine, but that doesn't mean we're not going to be out. We shouldn't be out at 2 o'clock in the morning checking cars at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're still going to continue to do that. But in terms of these because and I know that these cars getting rifled through may not be valuables taken, but it's an intrusion into people's privacy and their sense of security. So that's why I encourage people to call in and report where it's happening, because in this last particular little group of events, it was one location, and that particular location was very key to us locating where these individuals were hiding out. So it was very close to where they were. So it in fact, there was a group of them reported right around Caribou, and it was very, very close to, it was actually Constable Frisky and Constable Emmons that, through their hard work, located the individuals that were responsible for it, and they ended up with a whack of charges. So without these people calling in, and some of them called in, they didn't have anything stolen from their car. There was no damage to their car. They just said somebody was in my car, there were footprints around it. That's all it was. But those 3 or 4 calls combined, we could say, okay, well, we know they're somewhere within this area. So, yeah, to your initial question, yes. By all means, yeah, it's going to we're gonna increase that, and that's the sort of stuff we need to know. Where should we spend our time, and like, what should we be doing?
Supplemental, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Cox.
Thank you and welcome, Councillor Fritzie. Two questions. The first, 35 calls for service for missing persons. Is that 35 different people, or is that a handful of individuals? It is more than one call a day for the month of December.
Yes, that is mostly two people, and it's from the youth facility mostly. So it's no, it's not 35 different people. It's mostly the same people, and it's just the way the files are scored. That it's two individuals mostly for that time period.
Thank you. And then my second question is to do with the prisoner count by year, and it is a significant drop from more than 500 in 2010 to 166 this past year. Any thoughts on the reasons?
This is, anecdotal. A lot of it's before I got here, and it's just talking with people that have been here and have some local knowledge. But it appears to be a lot to do with people that were either incarcerated long term, people that have left the community or passed away, or and the third thing is partially to do, and I don't want to attribute a lot of it to this, but partially to do with maybe a change in how we deal with some of these types of calls, so that there's more of a focus on finding a safe place for the person to go versus taking them directly to jail. I can't speak to how that was done 5 years ago, but I can speak to now that when we find an intoxicated person, our primary goal is to find them a safe residence to go to versus taking them to jail. So that's usually, we find, one place, sometimes it's two, depending on how busy we are, we'll say, 1, 2, maybe 3 places, and then it's like, okay, we run out of options. But I think there's more of a shift generally in our organization to do that now, and that's attributing to treatment. So I think those are maybe the top 3 reasons why. But I think if I'm speaking to people that have worked here, 4 or 5 years ago, and they're saying there were some individuals that were in the community before that were basically there every night, and were accounting for, one person was perhaps accounting for 100 of those prisoner counts. So we're just not seeing that now, thankfully.
Supplemental, Councillor Cox. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Councillor Fritzie to the community. Hope you enjoy your time here. I really appreciate these delegations. A lot of really great information sharing, and I think it helps us better understand what the RCMP is dealing with, specifically what you were just talking about, and we can communicate that to constituents as we go. There's just 2 things I'd like to bring up. I don't think this was discussed at the December delegation, but I'm not sure if you're aware that the District Education Authority recently approached the town requesting stop signs be installed on McDougall before and after JPT school. The reason for that request is because of perception from the school that there's a lot of speeding through the school zone. And, I don't know if this has been discussed between the RCMP and bylaw officer or staff, but I know our bylaw officer has ramped up a presence in the school zone before school, at lunches, and after school. Following up with some of the members of the DA, it seems like this is also a concern out of school hours, kids on playgrounds leaving at an hour afterwards and those kind of things. If it's possible, then we can post a full complement to have a little bit more traffic enforcement. As we just mentioned, this is a small town and news travels fast. A few speeding tickets go a long way to mitigating others to speed. So if that's something that the RCMP are actively looking at, I think that would be, it would go a long way to meeting some of the concerns that we've been hearing.
Yeah, absolutely, and we've already been approached by Gavin there for some joint projects, and we secured. We just got to get it over. We secured the use of a handheld radar gun, which is a little bit better than mounting in our vehicle, so it's a little bit more of an element of surprise. So we've already earmarked a few days for this month, and yeah, we've got enough bodies on day shift now that we're able to do some of that. So yeah, we're quite able to assist with that, so.
Thank you, that's great to hear. The other one item I wanted to bring up is I live out of Bell Rock, and Greg Remington on our Team P crews are looking a little lost out there. A couple of weeks ago, he asked me a couple of times before stopping and asking me if I knew where this address was, and after a little bit of problem solving, because nobody has street addresses out there and they're not visible, we figured out who he was looking for. It just got me to thinking in relationship to impaired driving, and this is a concern that I have driving back and forth between Bell Rock all the time. Just like the pull-off where the map is, where people sit there and sometimes don't do things they're supposed to be doing. Old Bell Rock has a turnoff where if you pull in there, you will frequently find empty liquor bottles, empty beer cans, other evidence of recent substance uses, and then these people are driving back into town. So again, if you're looking for impaired drivers, that's a place that you might be able to find some indication. Like they frequent there, I know, because I walk past and run into it. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Westphal?
Hi, and welcome as well. I just wanted to bring up this time, though it's been 4 years, I noticed this time with the break-ins and vehicle issues again, that the mob justice took a different turn, where we saw a fair bit of Facebook names, photos, sneakers, documentation. There was quite the posts and sharing, and it's an interesting. I'm not surprised it's taken this long for it to get to that point, but did that change anything, or does that make it? You know, it's a dangerous escalation when you start getting that going. I'm not sure if that changes anything going forward or not, but that's sort of what I've been expecting for 3 years, and surprised it took us long. But unfortunately, the next part is a lot of people have reached the point of past fed up, and now you start getting into dangerous territory of possibly inaccurate or ill-informed, Facebook justice. So it makes it more challenging for you. But
Yeah, it's I mean, it doesn't, for us, it makes it more concerning, obviously, when a youth's involved. Until we get to the point where it's a criminal offense and direct threats are made, there's not a whole lot we can do, unfortunately, because it's free speech. It's, people, if there was, laws against poor taste, I guess Facebook probably wouldn't exist. But it's definitely concerning, and it's sad to see that sort of thing when you're talking about a young person. It doesn't know. I guess short answer it makes it more concerning for us in terms of locating that person safely. But there's not a lot that we can do in terms of preventing how people think, I guess, and what they're posting. If that answers your question.
that was more of, I guess, an observation. I think that this has gone on for long enough with varying youth that there has, I don't know, people have developed maybe a thick-skinned or less tolerance of it, or is sort of boiled over to the point where, again, it's become the previous sergeants and even the previous persons before his sort of inherited, where it's reaching that. I think I told the last sergeant, it's the unfortunate thing is we're sort of watching youth become either incarcerated individuals in the future or watching somebody die in slow motion, which is what the concern is, right? Is that this escalates to what point, until what's our way of what's getting the car off the tracks, or the train off the tracks, I guess, from that path. But now as we're reaching the point of, it's only a matter of time before the wrong person has their vehicle broken into and doesn't care enough about the situation to post publicly, make names, faces, or other addresses and everything else part of it. So it becomes dangerous for everybody, but also complicates matters. So we're bringing it up because I guess we're all in the same room.
Thank you, Councilor Westphal. Councilor Beaulieu?
Yeah, I'd like to welcome Constable Frisbee into our community. My question is kind of similar to Councilor Westphal, and that is with the repeat minors that are doing damage to the community, is costing a private citizen a lot of money to the damage they do to the properties. My concern is when these couple youth are put in a facility to be cared for, it seems like they have the willpower to come and go as they please in this facility. If they're there for troubled problems and stuff, they should be more secure and more controlled in that environment. Also, what is the purpose of labeling them as missing to our community and to the NWT when we know they are, excuse me, repeat runaways? Can we label them as runaways rather than missing person? Because that is a concern to a lot of people. We don't know the environment of the youth or what the condition of the youth is that's missing. So we put lots of people in a worry state, rather as if we know they're repeat offenders of coming and going in this facility. We'd rather see them as a runaway so we know who we're looking for and the damage they do and stuff when they're out in the community. Thanks.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I don't have any control over how they're classified. They're reported to us and as missing, and we have to treat them as missing. So there's a protocol in place that we have to follow in terms of how we treat our response to them. So every time they leave the facility, they're called in as missing, and so they're treated no different as if a person, another child that leaves a residence, and we have to respond to it the same way. It warrants the same response. So they're basically, I can't speak to every individual youth at that facility, but they're some of them, are the majority of them, I believe, are the responsibility of social services. So we're responsible to go out and look for them as if they were anyone else's child. So we have to treat them as missing. So it warrants a response from us as if they're missing. So there's not really any other classification. We don't have a classification of runaways or AWOL or anything like that. So that's basically that's our response is to treat them as a missing person. There's no other way to classify them, unfortunately. And as far as how the facility, I can't speak to how they what the rules are at the facility. All I know is that when we get a call that they left, how we respond to it. That's all I can speak to.
Thank you. Mr. Morrison?
Oh, and I would just add, I think part of your process is you have to do a press release. And so that's why the media picks up on them and says missing, because part of your missing persons process is to put the notification out in the public, right? And so that's why we're seeing these missing people show up on county radio or whatever.
It's after a period of time. We don't do it immediately, but after a certain period of time has elapsed, it's part of our process that we have to notify. We have to put this release out to say this person is missing. It's part of our process. And I understand the frustration with some community members because they see this, well, wasn't this person missing a week ago? And then we've had people call in and say, well, is there a search party organized? And then, I have to try to explain without violating privacy that no, there's, it's not like they're missing in the woods. It's not like a missing hunter but it's still, from our viewpoint, the person is missing. So we have to respond the same way.
Thank you. Supplemental, Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, different topic. Councillor Westwell referred to, people going to Facebook to air their concerns and yet, the RCMP do not source their information from Facebook, hence the request if you have, a concern or something to report, call the RCMP. And I think in my tenure here, historically, we've seen sort of a hesitancy to call dispatch, to call the RCMP. And that may have gotten worse if only because of the introduction of sort of that additional padding of 911, the 911 response. I mean, in my own personal experience, this was many years ago, I tried to call in something and I did not know the physical address. In fact, we had brown house and greenhouse, and I didn't know the actual number of the street. And that was very hard at 3 a.m. explaining that to somebody in Yellowknife, right? And so with the addition of 911, I just heard that one of the people who tried to call in about some of the vandalism that was occurring several weeks ago was told by 911 that no one could respond because no one was currently on. And so you might wish to talk to 911 and talk to them about their scripting, because I don't know if that's appropriate to be telling the public that there's no police available in the community right now, or to provide that kind of message. And if that's the sort of the message that people are getting when they try and call, that might be reduce the likelihood that they'll call or provide information.
Yeah, I'll definitely look into that, because that's not the response you should be getting. We're always available. We're not necessarily on call at some hours, but we're always available. We're paid to be here 24 hours a day, so our response is 24 hours a day.
Any further questions or comments from council? Well, thank you, Sergeant Peters and Constable Fritzky. Again, welcome to the community. Thank you for presenting to us this evening. We always appreciate the reports and the cooperation that we have with your CMP and our interactions. And you are more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting. However, you are not required to do so.
Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. So at this time, we'll be going to approval of council minutes from our meeting of December 15th. Can I get a mover, please? Councilor MacArthur.
I move that the minutes of the regular meeting 12-20 of December 15th, 2020 be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Kubrat. Discussion. Mr. Morrison.
Thank you. Apologies. I think we missed the COVID update on these minutes, unless I'm not seeing it. I don't think I'm seeing it. So I would like to add it under G, section G, Council Business, E, Administration, number 2. Council 1.
Sorry, that's for the agenda?
Yes. Oh, sorry, I thought we approved the agenda already. I apologize. Sorry, I thought we were doing it after. My apologies. I'm really late.
That's okay.
I don't have to do a code update.
I think we can discuss that. In regards to the council minutes from December 15th, are there any questions or comments, changes? No. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Business arising. None. Okay. Moving on, we have council business, introduction and consideration of our committee reports. Actually, sorry, before we do that, declarations of financial interest. Are there any declarations of financial interest for tonight's meeting? None? All right. So then we'll move on to the council business. First is the Corporate Services Standing Committee. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Kubrat.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that Corporate Services Standing Committee minutes from January 5th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor MacArthur. Discussion. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next, we have the 2021 annual borrowing bylaw 1011. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Cox.
I move that the 2021 annual borrowing bylaw 1011 be brought to the regular meeting of council on January 19th, 2021 for first and second reading.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder? Councillor Couvret. Discussion? Councillor Westwell.
More of a process question, as I've wanted this in a few meetings and just sort of let it slide by, but do we actually have to bring these forward to council as motions? I realize that our directive is to sort of bring recommendations forward to council for council's consideration and voting, but we actually have the annual borrowing bylaw in the council package based on the recommendation from the committee. I just wonder if that means that we have to still approve it. It's more of a formality we've just kind of done. I just wonder, is it necessary if it's already been a recommendation approved by committee that the item be on the agenda? Anyway, it's already approved as the agenda. I just kind of got thinking with since sliding by. That's one of those extra steps we do that seems, I don't know, superfluous or not. I'm not sure if that's relevant, but anyway, that was my only comment.
Mr. Morrison.
Yeah, I agree. I thought about it before myself. My concern is that I'm to remove it from where the recommendation occurred. I'm modifying the statements and the actions of council, where I have a concern about doing that as well, right? However, we are deep in the depths of the council procedures bylaw, and there is opportunity to put some wording in that document to clarify it, because it is redundant, right? It's not just bylaws, it's also appointments. You know, we have appointments in the body of the recommendations. We could actually sit and consolidate them all into the appointment heading. So there's redundancy there for sure.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? So to the motion 21-004, all in favor? Thank you, passed unanimously. Next, we have the 2021 Consolidated Rates and Fees Bylaw 1012. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. I move that the 2021 Consolidated Rates and Fees Bylaw 1012 be brought to the regular meeting of council on January 19th, 2021 for first and second reading.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Bolio. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have the Town of Fort Smith representative on the Fort Smith Housing Authority Board of Directors. Councillor Cox.
That the Town of Fort Smith advertise the position of Town of Fort Smith representative on the Fort Smith Housing Authority Board of Directors to the public for council consideration.
Thank you. Seconder. Councillor MacArthur. Discussion. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Moving on to community services. Standing committee minutes. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Westwell.
I move the community services standing committee minutes from January 12th, 2021 be adopted.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor MacArthur. Discussion. Councillor Couvret.
Thank you, Your Worship. With respect to the minutes, I must admit that I misspoke at the Community Services Standing Committee meeting on January 21st under the item 8 other business, where we were dealing with the council honorary bylaw. And I misspoke, indicating that only 3 people had applied for the board. And upon further review, there was actually 4 people who had applied to the board back then, and 3 of those were appointed.
Thank you, Councillor Couvret. Those changes will be noted in tonight's meeting minutes.
Yes, Mayor Brink.
Any further discussion to the minutes?
I have one other item, under other business. I made other business in there. We spoke briefly during that about the NWT resolution. And we just wanted to indicate that I believe that as a municipal body, we should still be submitting a resolution regarding the immediate appointment of a board of governors for Aurora College. With the deadline being so close, I believe that will now have to go forward as a resolution on the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Couvret. Councillor Westwell?
Sorry, and I thought the third and final call was just issued today, wasn't it? And that's not even the time to sort that out, but, and then, as we discussed at the last meeting, it was my understanding that we were supportive of putting forward a resolution based on the 2 recommendations for those 2 boards, but separately. We just have to formalize that this evening. I guess that was my thoughts. That was my takeaway, I guess, from the last meeting.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. And next we have a Community Services Advisory Board reappointment. Councillor Cox.
I move that Jonah Mitchell be reappointed to the Community Services Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending December 31st, 2022.
Seconded by Councillor Bolio. Discussion. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have reappointments for the Economic Development Advisory Board. Can I get a motion, please? Councillor Couvret.
Thank you. I move that James Idema and Pierre Chavillon be reappointed to the Economic Development Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending December 31st, 2022.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Westwell. Discussion. All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next, we have appointments to the Council Honorarium Bylaw Review Committee. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Cox.
I move that Alexander Pryor and Debbie Payne be appointed to the Council Honorarium Bylaw Review Committee.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor MacArthur. Discussion? Councillor Cox?
So does that bring us to 3 members of the public for that committee, plus Councillor Kubert. So then it will be ready to meet and review the bylaw.
Mr. Morrison?
There is a proposed motion for council later in the agenda.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously, thank you. Next, we have a motion regarding the Fort Smith Health Center. Can I get a mover, please? Councilor MacArthur?
Move that the mayor and administration issue a follow-up letter to the new Fort Smith Health Center Chief Operating Officer regarding the previous request from the town for information on laboratory testing at the Fort Smith Health Center, and that the new Chief Operating Officer be invited to delegate to mayor and council at the Community Services Standing Committee meeting on February 9th, 2021, to provide an introduction and an update on staffing and other activities at Fort Smith Health Center.
Seconded by Councilor Kubert. Discussion? Councilor Westwell?
All I get thinking about this is that our, in school, we have like a friendly delegation. We do have some other opportunities with maybe other departments. You know, we have an extended invitation to the new superintendent of TI in the community. There's a new language commissioner's office based in Fort Smith. That might be worthwhile. Similarly to extend, I know we would love to see the college president, you know, this way sometime. And I'm sure we have other regional positions we still have in the community, but you know, if that's something this is a communication path we want to take, which is more of the friendly face delegation to council, then maybe that's something we can extend to other offices and other departments where we've had similar challenges with communication and other issues. So,
Thank you, Councilor Westwell. I believe we will be soon or upcoming having a new lands superintendent as well. Councilor MacArthur?
What about inviting our MLA or one of her representatives to meet with us as well?
Thank you, Councilor MacArthur. Any further questions or comments on the motion as presented? All in favor? Passed unanimously, thank you. And next we have the Municipal Services Standing Committee minutes. Can I get a mover, please? Councilor Kubert?
I move that the Municipal Services Standing Committee minutes from January 12th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Bowman. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously, thank you. And next we have a reappointment for the Sustainable Development Advisory Board. Can I get a mover, please? Councilor Westwell?
I move that Alyssa Etzel and Frank Green be reappointed to the Sustainable Development Advisory Board for a 2-year term ending December 31st, 2022.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Councilor Cox? Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next, we have enactment of bylaws and policies. We have the Advisory Board Bylaw 1009 for third reading. Councilor Cox.
I move that the advisory board bylaw 1009 be given third reading by title only.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Counselor Couplet. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously, thank you. Next, we have third reading for the road assumption bylaw. Can I get a mover, please? Counselor Couplet.
I move that the road assumption bylaw 1010 be given third reading by title only.
Thank you. Seconded by Counselor Cox. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously, thank you. And first reading of our 2021 annual borrowing bylaw 1011. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Westwell.
I move that the 2021 annual borrowing bylaw 1011 be introduced and given first reading. Whereas the Council of Municipal Corporation of the Town of Fort Smith, the Northwest Territories, deems it to be in the public interest to borrow money that may be required to meet expenditures during the 2021 fiscal year. Now, therefore, the Council of the Town of Fort Smith had a duly assembled meeting and access follows. That the mayor and senior administrative officer of the Town of Fort Smith and the Northwest Territories are hereby authorized on behalf of the Town of Fort Smith to borrow money. 2, that the total amount of money so borrowed shall be up to but not exceeding $600,000. 3, such money shall be borrowed from the Bank of Montreal, Fort Smith, Northwest Territories, and repaid thereto, together with this interest rate at a rate mutually agreed. Therewith. All money so borrowed shall be repaid out of and shall be at first charge upon the revenue of the Town of Fort Smith the year 2021. 5, the estimated revenue of the Town of Fort Smith set forth on the estimates for the year 2021 are $10,675,005.24. Number 6, that bylaw 1000 is hereby repealed.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder? Councillor MacArthur. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. Next is the 2021 annual borrowing bylaw second reading. Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Cox.
I move that the 2021 annual borrowing bylaw 1011 be given second reading by title only.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Beaulieu. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. The 2021 consolidated rates and fees bylaw for first reading. Councillor Westwell.
I move the 2021 consolidated rates and fees bylaw 1012 be introduced and given first reading. Whereas the Council of Municipal Corporation of the Town of Fort Smith, the Northwest Territories, deems it to be expedient and wishes to both consolidate and update various fees and charges collected by the Town of Fort Smith. Now, therefore, the Council of the Town of Fort Smith at a duly assembled meeting and access follows. 1, that this bylaw may be cited for all purposes as a 2021 consolidated rates and fees bylaw. 2, that Council of the Town of Fort Smith does now set the rates and fees for services described in the schedules attached to this bylaw as Schedule A to K. 3, that Schedules A to K attached hereto form part of this bylaw. And then 4, the bylaw 1002, the Schedules A to L be hereby repealed.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Smith. Discussion? All in favor? Passed unanimously. Thank you. And second reading, can I get a mover, please? Councillor MacArthur.
I'll move that the 2021 consolidated rates and fees bylaw 1012 be given second reading by title only.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder for the motion, please? Councillor Couvert. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. And next we have the Community Services Advisory Board Policy, GB 302, Councillor Hawks.
I move that policy GB 302, the powers and duties of the Community Services Advisory Board, be adopted as presented.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Bollier. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously. And moving on, we have mayor and council and board representative updates. Councillor Campbell.
Well, good evening, everybody. Our community skating rink is coming along good. And thanks to all our volunteers for now. That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Couvert.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of items. First one is related to back in December. There was, and in early January, several announcements and articles related to the federal government announcing $60 million to Parks Canada with regards to trying to maintain the status of Wood Buffalo National Park as a World Heritage Site, as UNESCO is has stated that the state of the park may lead them to recommend putting it on an endangered recognition list, basically stating that the park is there and it has outstanding universal values, but with developments related to the oil sands, Site C, and other environmental and climate change concerns, that the status of the park was in jeopardy. We all know that Wood Buffalo National Park is a keystone to the economy of Fort Smith, serving as a fairly healthy employer of people in the community. Also, it serves as a key attraction for our, I'll say, fledgling tourism industry, but it is an opportunity that hopefully in the future we will expand upon. On December 21st, Captain Radio did an article about the announcement of things, and it was really nice to hear that within the article that the community of Fort Chipewyan will be seeing an increase in employment as a result of the announcement. And this is all tied to the action plan which calls for an enhanced co-management, monitoring, and research. Now, there was no mention within the article or any other subsequent articles that I read of benefits occurring within the community of Fort Smith. So it would be nice at this time to possibly, since we were talking about it earlier about inviting people to delegate, is to have senior management from Wood Buffalo National Parks or Parks Canada do a presentation to us about how they see this action plan moving forward. What are some of the benefits that they see occurring to our community. Well, with this enhanced expansion, it's a $60 million over 3 years, plus the previous 27 million that has been spent in the last 3 years. So a lot of economic activity happening with respect to Whitwell National Park. And it'd be nice to get a better handle on how that is actually impacting our community. And possibly while we're at it, we could dispel a rumor flying around that one of their key administrative positions will be based out of Calgary in the near future. The second item I'd like to talk about, and Deputy Mayor Smith will attest to this as well, is condition of Highway 5. And more specifically, the last stretch sort of from where the roads, where the highway's new sand shelter is to Trout Street. This was a section of road that was redone in 2019. And at that time, we were not giving them accolades for the quality of work that they did on that project. And here we are less than 2 years later, and it's in worse shape than it was prior to them paving that section. So I think it's getting to the point where it is, if you're driving it at speed limit, you're damaging smaller vehicles. So I think it's imperative that Department of Transport address this issue as soon as possible, hopefully this upcoming spring. And while we're talking about it's basically related to the same department, is to receive a timely response from that department regarding our HF request for information regarding the changes to the runway that was done back in 2019 as well. Last item is I recently attended a museum board meeting. Although they had a very successful sales of arts and crafts over the Christmas, prior to the Christmas season with their pop-up displays, currently they're having a bit of a challenge with staffing issues. So if people are interested in getting involved in archaeology and employment related to the museum, there are a couple of positions being advertised. They're looking for a curator, and as well as they'll be looking for a programs coordinator. So they continue to nice facility providing opportunities for community as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Couvret. Councillor MacArthur?
Yes, thank you. I'll start by saying thanks to the town work staff. They're doing an excellent job out there, working overtime, out on the road by 5 in the morning during the weekdays. Even our, I don't know, we still call him the director. He's over there at 7 o'clock in the morning, make sure that everybody's out the door on time, which is good to see. I've never seen him up that early before. That's my cousin up on the book. Also, hats off to NWT Power Corp for Sunday morning. I guess the power was out on the east end of, west end of McDougall, just past Lewes. They had it fixed in under 55 minutes. So great for them for doing that. They had no idea it was out until the phone started ringing, which is good. Thanks to the public. Next thing is, I was going to bring up that Highway 5 in next week's priority meeting, but yeah, it's gone to hell. With especially this after the summer with all the trucks hauling the gravel for the Pitts Road, I think they should be. We responsible for fixing it, or at least highways get on it after this, Rose is in chip sealing that section this year. And the last thing is, I'm wondering if us as counselors could maybe get a heads up due to COVID stuff when there's gonna be shutdowns, i.e. Town Hall and Rec Center, before we read it on Facebook. I'm just wondering if we can get the heads up first. And that's all, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor MacArthur. Councillor Cox?
Thank you. I too am looking forward to next week's council priorities session. Specifically, I look forward to discussing one of our priorities is to figure out how to get or request PCNE, how to have our representatives on the DEA elected as part of the next municipal election, which will be in October. Although the town indoor recreation facilities were closed on the weekend, it was great to see so many people enjoy the outdoors on Sunday, which was World Snow Day, both on the snowboard hill and at the ski club. Kudos, a shout out to the volunteers with both those organizations who maintain, those volunteers maintain their venues. And the snowboard hill is legacy infrastructure from the 2018 Irish Winter Games. And it's been, with the warm weather we've had so far this winter, it's been really wonderful to see how busy it's been on weekends. So a shout out to all the people who are involved with that and the volunteers who are making it happen. It was interesting to me to read that we are not the only community experiencing challenges with engaging the public with municipal government. Hay River also, they held budget consultation meetings in town of Hay River, and nobody attended their budget consultation. So perhaps we can, the communications committee is meeting this weekend, or this week, in advance of the priorities discussion next week. So maybe we can continue to brainstorm ideas for how to further engage the public. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Deputy Mayor Smith?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. I assume we're going to be talking about COVID and town operations at some point during administration, so I'll say my comments on that. I've actually read the Wood Buffalo National Park Action Plan as part of my day job. 6 million sounds like a lot of money, but I think most of that is intended to be invested in Indigenous government organizations and in research filling knowledge gaps. I know that there was one position that was advertised to be staffed in Portsmouth. It was essentially a project lead on the project, but I don't think that Wood Buffalo National Park per se will be receiving a lot of additional. But I do agree that it's something we should follow up on. I just want to remind members of council and the public that there's currently a CRTC call for feedback on Northwest Health's phone, internet, and mobile solutions. If any of you have anything you would like to say to the CRTC, it's not the easiest online process, but it's kind of interesting because your comments are public and you can read everything else that everyone else has put in there, which doesn't mean spending far too much time reading other people's comments. But it is an interesting part of the public process, and I think we generally all have a lot to say about Northwest Health. So this is important because those documentation will be considered the next rate increase, the next service level change, etc. I'm told anyway, that's what it says on the website. I just want to quickly talk about something that apparently happened at the Community Services Advisory Board meeting, the last one. I haven't read the minutes of it, but there was some discussion around changing town donation policy or reporting around town donation policies. I wasn't there as secondhand information, but I was handed a letter by several members of the executive of one of our local sports organizations that spent several days drafting in response to this. And it's like, I don't think we're changing donation policy. I haven't heard about that, maybe it's kind of reporting. I guess in communication, there's a sender and there's a receiver, and we're not always sure what the receiver sends hears despite what the sender has sent. So I think sometimes things get a little misconstrued. I know it's been a challenging year for a lot of volunteer organizations to deliver recreation in the community, especially with the extra COVID requirements and compliances they've had to put on. So I think if the town is looking for changes in reporting, I would suggest that maybe a template is developed that clearly outlines what the town is looking for, and that volunteer organizations could easily input data into, rather than trying to figure out what the town may or may not be looking for. So perhaps we'll get to discuss that a little bit more in the next community services meeting. But it was something that's brought to my attention, so I just wanted to pass that along. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. Councillor Bollier?
Just a couple concerns. One is maybe the Alberta NWT border. I witnessed a few people that have come through our border from Fort Pitt to do shopping in our community. And I know there are a few people in the community that are benefiting from picking these people up at Moose Island. And they have also requested that they will be back in town to do some more shopping. And they are using Skidoos to come up to Moose Island and have somebody pick them up, to bring them into the community to do the shopping and bring them back out. And I'm kind of concerned about our border security checks. I don't know if we have to put more restrictions on them and actually go into checking how many people are in the vehicle when they go through the border and when they come back. It's a concern to me because we've got elders in our community and we've got a lot of people that are disabled and that when we start having people coming in here and they are not tested for COVID and leaving. And with our communities in the NWT now facing another shutdown with the COVID that's coming around, it is a big concern. And the other concern I have is what I voiced with the RCMP when they were here earlier this evening, is the miners doing all the damage, the trouble miners in this facility. I don't know if it's up to the mayor and council to check on what kind of restrictions they have there, but I also noticed that the health minister or the health officer from health center is going to be here or requested to be here on February 9th. My concern is what type of restrictions does social services put on these miners that are put in these troubled homes, and what kind of programming. So it's better for our community to be safe, because the last incident did involve personal threats to a person that had damaged property done to them, and the cost to the people that had these damage done to their vehicle and stuff is a costly one. It's not a couple of dollars, it's a few thousand. And it seems like these troubled miners are getting away with doing whatever they want, and the community is paying at a high cost. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bollier. Councillor Westphal?
I don't think I have anything.
Thank you, Councillor Westphal. I do have a couple of comments. Happy New Year, it's 2021. Hopefully not as eventful as 2020. We are excited that we have our first public round of COVID vaccines coming out this week for priority population ages 60 plus. If you are aware of anybody who is in that category, please let them know that the vaccine is available. I believe they are doing the rollout at the Salt River First Nation Convention Center building. I would also like to pass on my condolences to the Burke family. And I wanted to speak briefly about the COVID response from this weekend, and I'm certain that Mr. Morrison will have some additional comments. So thank you, Councillor MacArthur, for your comments, and we did hear similar comments from other councillors. Just while there was an email that went out to council, we had heard quite late on Friday afternoon about the case coming out of Yellowknife, that it was an unknown source, and we had decisions to make in regards to the safety of our community and the safety to our staff. And so we did make the decision to close our recreation facilities. And with the late hour of Friday afternoon, we did rush to get the messaging out, and so there was some oversight on getting the message out to all of council. So I do apologize for that. It was not intentional, and our goal was to get the messaging out to the community as quickly as possible. I would also like to just say that our thoughts are with the residents of Fort Liard, with their community, and we hope that everybody that is affected has a full recovery. Those are my comments for this evening. Mr. Morrison?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I will speak, I've added the item on the COVID update. The only thing I might want to touch on is that there is no change to donation policies. There's no change to how we fund organizations. We have approached the Community Services Advisory Board to review how we fund, to look at potentially going to more of a contribution agreement approach, to try and implement some of the findings of the Community Services Master Plan as approved by Council, where we'll be looking to work with organizations that help access more at-risk, socio-economic disadvantaged groups. And that's what we're looking to do, is to try and potentially tie the money we give to these organizations to some form of to ensure that the programs that the town funds and is involved in benefits all members of the community and not just select members. It's not even close to being a policy. It's a thought process before Community Services Advisory Board. And that's all it is at this point. Such a change would require approval of councils. We're probably 6 months to a year away from that. Of course, we would involve user groups in the discussion. It would be similar to the healthy foods policy, where we would work with the groups on implementation. We don't want to detract from our local volunteers' ability to go out and provide service, but we are looking at it. So, before council is, as Councillor Cox alluded to before, we are now looking to put the appointees to the council honorary committee to work. So the appointment of any ad hoc committee requires a motion of council. In your backer, you will see the motion presented to you. For discussion, the part that's left blank is to establish the term of that committee. You can give them a calendar term to a certain date, or you can give them to the completion of their task. So that will be council's decision on how you wish to set the end date of that ad hoc committee.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. Councillor Campbell?
Okay, I move that council honorary and bylaw review committee be established and that the council establish a term of reference for the committee. That Kyle Voss, Alexander Pryor, and Debbie Payne be appointed to the committee on behalf of public, and that Councillor Kubaret be appointed on behalf of council. That council establish a term for the committee of completion of tasks, and that the committee provide a complete recommendation to council of all the matters within the term of reference.
seconded by Councillor Bolio. Deputy Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Councillor Campbell, for reading that in. My preference would be to have a set time placed on the completion of the task. The reason for that is we've been through this process a couple of times. We haven't come up with a satisfactory result, but I think that we want to have any changes to the honorarium bylaw in place before the next election, so that people who consider running election know exactly what they're signing up for and what meager things they might get out of it in terms of the financial honorarium. So working backwards from the election date is in October. We really aren't passing any new bylaws in September. Typically, it's a transition period, so you're looking at a July or August cycle for the last ability to do business, which means that it's a 4 or 5 month task, I think, for the council honorarium bylaw review committee, in my mind, anyway.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. I agree. I believe that part of the council honorarium review is that the recommendation is that it's done prior to the next sitting of council. Councillor Cox.
Can we amend the motion to establish a term for the committee until June 30th, 2021?
I agree with that.
Councillor Bolio. Further discussion? And this is not to say that they can't be done before that time. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Passed unanimously, thank you. Mr. Morrison?
Thank you. The time for COVID updates. So, actually, while this meeting was happening, we received our evening update from the GNW team. So they've taken the daily evening updates given the escalation in the territories. And it's good news in the latest update. There are no new cases in Port Liard or anybody associated with that outbreak. They and any of the people they've tested and follow-up testing of the people that tested positive, I think, on Monday, none of them have come back positive. So that's good news. The signal in Hay River is dissipating, and as is the signal in Yellowknife and their sewage sampling, and there are no new cases there. So whatever happened in Yellowknife was a completely random thing that nobody yet understands. So let's talk about the closure of our facilities. So I think the mayor touched on most of the salient points. I'll dig a little deeper. I'll go through the email I forwarded council on Monday and perhaps editorialize from that. So it was approximately 3:30 p.m. We received notification that there was a possibility of community spread in Yellowknife. Now the update that was provided by the GNWT went out of its way not to say community spread. But if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, all indications are that it's most likely some type of duck, right? Where the concept is you don't know where it came from. And this is fundamentally different than what happened in Liard, where they knew exactly where it came from. A person drove it up from down south and then, for whatever reason, didn't follow the rules. Other people got it. That one you can nail down. If you move fast enough, you can nail it down because you know who they talk to. You can go talk to who they talk to. You can shut the whole community down and get on top of it. But in the case of Yellowknife, they didn't know where this person got it. So whomever gave it to them could be walking around and talking to, who knows? They gave it to one person, shows they're not taking care. They could have given it to other people. So that set off alarm bells for me and realized we made this decision on town facilities before we even knew about the yard. It was based solely on what was going on in Yellowknife. So, What else informed this? We in the north have been relying on our border to protect us. Some of us wear masks, some of us distance, not all of us do. I think we all know somebody who caught a flu this fall, right? If you can catch a flu, you can catch the virus, right? I think probably some people in this room got the flu this fall, right? So if you can catch the flu, you can catch the virus, which means some of the protective measures you think you're taking aren't necessarily as effective as you think they are. We have been relying on our border. So when we see indications that our border has been penetrated in some manner, there's cause for concern, right? And the living, breathing example is our neighbors to the east of Nunavut. Within days, hundreds of people had it and someone died. And realize there, you're dealing with smaller communities that are connected by air travel only. So it's a lot easier to track this stuff down than we do in the north, in our north, where we're larger communities, lots of road travel where you can't necessarily trace who's gone where. So there was concerns there. I spoke with the mayor, and we made the decision again at 3:30 that with an abundance of caution, we were going to close our facilities for the weekend, watch how this thing unfolded, and then make a call on Monday, right? Now, did we overreact? If COVID didn't spread and it didn't show up in our community, yeah, we overreacted. If we didn't do anything and it spread in our community, we didn't do enough. So we're faced with the choice of being told we didn't do enough or we overreacted. We chose to be the guys that overreacted in this situation. Some people were critical of that decision, right? When you walk into a town facility, you make a personal decision about your own personal safety with respect to the virus. When we open a town facility, we make a decision about everybody who walks into that building, everybody who they will interact with afterwards, and our staff, right? So we have a higher duty that we have to attend to. We have a different decision matrix that we go through when we assess the risk, then does an individual user. Hay River has a different matrix. Their decision matrix is that if there is proof of community spread in the community, they will close the facilities. I think that is a bit of a closing the barn door after the fact kind of approach, right? Once it's spreading, given the hysteresis loop between when you get it and when you know you got it, and how many people you infected in that window, I think you have to have earlier onset triggers than that. So we made that call at 3:30 on Friday afternoon. We made the call based on all the factors I've outlined to close our facilities. We wanted that closure out into the public by 5 o'clock, because that's when people go home. That's when people at work are making their plans for the evening. We wanted to get that messaging out. That message was sent to council at around 3:30 at that time. You all received an email, but I realize not everybody lives on email. And the fact that some councilors saw it on Facebook means they're on Facebook without checking their email. But so it did go. It also went to the comms committee, was put together right away, and the messaging went out. Since that decision was made, we saw Fort Liard happen. 5 cases in Fort Liard in 2 days, right? We saw, last I checked, 5 Northwest Territories communities closed the borders altogether. We're not just talking about closing public facilities. They put gates up on the road and said nobody come in. Fort Simpson closed its recreation facilities. And at one point, I think on Sunday, the chief public health officer was expressing concerns that the case in Yellowknife was associated with the seniors center, the seniors home in the community. Government offices closed to the public and made themselves accessible by appointment only. So I would suggest that again, what occurred after we made our decision and the actions by other similar government organizations after we made our decision supported our decision. Subsequent to that, on Tuesday morning, we checked, we assessed on Monday morning, and at that point, there was still no good news. There was still no certainty about what was happening in Yellowknife. The case numbers in the yard were increasing. There were still concerns that it might have made it out of the yard in Fort Simpson at the time. So based on this, let's call it a lack of good news, we decided to wait through Monday. And on Tuesday, what we found is that they couldn't find anything in YK. There were no more symptoms, no more people showing up with symptoms. The testing they were doing was coming back negative. So now that we have a 48-hour testing cycle, right, it's easier for us to make 48-hour decisions based on risk. The signals in Hay River were slowing down, and the containment, there were cases showing up in Liard, but they were contained to Fort Liard. So these indicated to us that the situation in Yellowknife wasn't escalating, and the situation in Liard was contained, and based on that, we chose to open our facilities again. So, considerations and things we could have done better. There were some concerns, for example, my internal email to Smith's Landing First Nation was edited and then posted on their Facebook page as a message from the town, and was subsequently picked up by CBC as a statement from the town of Fort Smith. So that was problematic. But I'm not too concerned because you know what, in a situation like this, we're all rushing to get information out. We're just trying to get information out to the public. We actually were trying very hard to inform people. And the other one was, you know, there was some labeling of the message that came out of the mayor's office as from mayor and council. And in an emergency response, what happens is, you know, there are some arbitrary decisions made. The mayor's office communicates. I think that if we had wanted to have a big, long conversation about this, was this an emergency that gives you the authority to act unilaterally like that? We can't have that conversation. And that's a bigger conversation because all our emergency response is predicated on, you know, there's a fire, we have to act quickly, we do arbitrary things to deal with this risk, and it's over in a couple of days. Right? In this case, we've had this long, drag-out public health emergency that's been going on for 10 months now. And I've brought this before council before, right? It's starting to strain sort of all the systems we have in place to act on an emergency basis for this continued period of time. One of the things that was actually a statement, it was told to me by Councillor Kissinger, is that we did a good message saying, due to an abundance of caution, we're closing our facilities, because we knew what the territories were saying. We knew that the territories were saying, well, there's this situation in Yellowknife, but not everybody knew that, right? Because the GNWT message wasn't necessarily out. So they saw a response to the GNWT message, but they didn't know what the GNWT message was, what the GNWT was telling us, and what we were reacting to. And so they were like, well, what's going on? Why is the town reacting this way? Not that they questioned what we were doing, but they questioned why we were doing it because we hadn't given them that information, right? So that is a place where I think we can improve in the future, and our communication is not to assume that people know what we know. Other considerations, you know, the one thing is, well, the chief public health officer didn't say to close your community centers. Chief public health officer sets a minimum standard. We're allowed to set a higher standard. We're allowed to have a lower risk tolerance. And a great example of that is, on average, we have a higher percentage of at-risk people in our community than do other communities. We have more seniors in our community. We advertise ourselves as a seniors community. We offer specific benefits to seniors in order to keep them in this community. But that also means that our community is more at risk to things like this, and we should act accordingly. Chief Public Health Officer will do things like say, we need, because of the risk in the territories, we're going to move from Emerging Wisely Phase 1 to Emerging Wisely Phase 2 to Emerging Wisely Phase 1. They make territorial level decisions. We have the ability to make municipal level decisions. In the as such, they're triggers. What actions or influences or environmental considerations are making the chief public health officer decide to go from phase 2 to phase 1 are going to be different than what triggers our decision. For example, when I was sitting on a very early meeting with the minister and the premier, and they were talking about their decisions to move between the various elements of emerging wisely, they talked about the economic considerations. You stay in phase 1 too long, and people's businesses go broke. People can't make rent because they can't work. So these things are influencing chief public health officer decisions and GMWT decisions about whether to shut down communities or not. We can close town recreation facilities without having those same considerations. We are not causing businesses to shut down by just closing some of our public facilities. Are we, reducing people's ability to recreate? Yes. I've heard concerns that we're affecting people's children's mental health because they can't recreate in town facilities. I understand that, right? Our role as a community is to provide recreational facilities. We talked about our wellness initiative as a community. But a weekend, I don't think is going to be a tipping point in that kind of situation. A weekend is a reactive measure to a risk, a very real risk, which is what drove this decision. So we can just move faster too. And I think that this is an approach we're going to look at in the future. We have the ability to do what we did this weekend. You know what? There's a risk. Let's respond quickly. One, if you can stop and think about it, if the government of Nunavut had responded more quickly with closures in Nunavut, they might have slowed the spread there. Because what happened in Nunavut, it happened in days. So a response that occurred in less than days, i.e. in hours, could have been effective. We have the ability to respond in hours, which is what we did. Now, did it turn out to be necessary? Apparently not. But again, if we had responded quickly and it turned out to have been needed, then I think we'd be having a very different conversation now. Our actions send a signal to the chief public health officer that we are willing to act proactively and that we are a tool that can be used to help battle the virus. And while some people were concerned about the closure of recreation facilities, a lot of people were happy. And I think that people want to see action being taken to threats. And in places where there was no action necessarily being seen to be taken by the GMWT, this is where you saw the 4x8 sheets of plywood and the barricades across the road with the spray painted "Don't come into our community" showing up. And I think we want to be aware that unless there is some action seen as being taken by government, a reasoned, measured response, then people may feel the need to act unilaterally on their own. And you know what? Again, I talked earlier, this is a very dangerous time in the North because people are fatigued with the virus. They're tired of it. I'm tired of it. I don't like wearing a mask. Right? I mean, I'm not the huggiest guy, but still the distance, the constant separation wears on a person. And hey, there's a vaccine coming, right? It's going to save everything. But meanwhile, the people south of our borders are the most contagious they've ever been, right? So if we let our guard down now, there's actually a very high risk, a much higher risk than ever before that it can carry through our community and do real damage. So I think that for all these reasons, this is why we made it. This is the deep dive. This wasn't just a reactive, shut everything, we're afraid. It was actually a lot of thought put into this and justification in a very short period of time. And I think that we've learned, that while we can move fast, we have to communicate effectively. And we're going to improve that when and if the situation that presents itself again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. I do have just a couple of comments. Some of the communities across the north have had their first round of vaccines. Other than the special care home, we have not yet had our first round of vaccines, never mind our second round of vaccine, and definitely not for the general public. Our response is going to be cautious. Our response is going to be cautious the next time there is a case of unknown origin in the territory. As Mr. Morrison had spoken to, we have seen what happened in Nunavut and how quickly it spread. And my parents live in Nunavut, and their community was shut down. The communities in the territory were shut down. And my stance is to be proactive, to think about not just who is going to our recreation center, but all of the members of our community. I did speak with the chief for Smith Landing First Nation. I spoke to the president of the Métis Association. I was not able to reach Chief Petra. When I spoke with President Heron, he had just come off the plane from Yellowknife and had talked about how just some of the behaviors that he had seen while he was in Yellowknife, and there was support from both leaders in regards to our decision. We have in our community and across the north overcrowding in houses. We have a very high Indigenous population, and these factors put people at higher risk. We also have in our community students from across the territory. And so we are not only concerned about the residents of our community, but the residents from other communities that are here in Fort Smith. So yes, it was a very quick decision. It was a very thought out decision. And going forward, we will make similar decisions to be on the side of caution. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Westwell?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're trying to sell me on it or not, but I think I already thought it was a great reaction with that I already commented in the email. I think it's a prudent decision to make, all things considered. There's no shortage of information available as to why it's still worth being considered and why it's so serious. Some really troubling stuff coming out now that it's a year later since the Wuhan virus was first uncovered, and some of the troubling long-term side effects that they're actually starting to uncover now. Anyway, fully supportive of the decision. I think it's better to be safe than sorry. I only ask that if it's an important email, just to make sure that it's not forwarded as a subject line of another email. But again, that's just, as you said, we've just gotten used to updates and advisories of COVID cases. And so if it was a message saying we're closing it, I missed it the first time I got the email. I read the subject saying Yellowknife got an unknown case. I didn't look below the forward to see that there was a message saying closing. That's purely my, I guess, email fatigue or process of not reading the full below the line. And otherwise, and these are minor. What was important is to get the message out. I just, again, as already stated, felt slight a fool when someone asked me when we were closed and it says mayor and council is who chose to close it. I went, oh. So I looked for an email that said, closure from mayor and council. But again, and these are minor. That's a minor ask in the grand scheme of things compared to the importance of getting the message out. And the fact that I heard people mad about it before I heard about it means that enough people must have known about it. So I think it was the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Westwell. Any further questions or comments by council? Deputy Mayor Smith.
Thank you. So I'll just preface my comments by saying that I think I've generally been very proud of how Fort Smith has acted on a very proactive stance, pushed the GNWT into state of emergencies, kind of led the way on EMO measures, etc. I definitely understand the rationale behind Friday's decision. While I may not have agreed with it fully, I don't want to really talk about what's happened in the past, because I totally understand the rationale. What I want to talk about is what will happen in the future, because I think that's where this conversation needs to go now. And there's so many nuances to this discussion. We're living in a hyper-politicized environment where people are, fear seems to dominate, especially on social media. It's often irrational. I heard a few earfuls this weekend, and it takes a while to kind of unpack what it is that someone's actually saying to you and what's really going on. If the town's operating policy is going to be that any community transmission in any community in NWT results in the shutdown of recreation facilities and programs, residents need to know that up front. That needs to be a clearly, in an abundance of caution, we are going to take a very cautious approach in the interest of the staff that work at the town, in the interest of residents that are interacting. People have to know to expect it, otherwise they react. Most of what people contacted me about on Friday night was, what do you know that we don't know? What else is going on that Unity hasn't told us about yet? So there's that climate of fear. And associated with that, I guess my concern around the response, I don't want to be in a position where the town cries wolf, and that in the long term delegitimizes the messages that come from the town or the leadership of the community. I think there's a lot of people, there's mix up between different layers of government, what roles and responsibilities are, who's actually responsible for what. So if this is going to, I fully expect that we're going to have more community transmission cases in the NWT for exactly the reasons that Mr. Morrison has pointed out. And I think that we all understand that our recreation programs and services are the first things that will get shut down, as they just were. And but I think there is an element of community well-being to all of that. So I think we need to take this opportunity to have a dialogue with the broader public around what our approach will be until we get beyond phase 2 of emerging wisely. Because people need to know why, and I think that's the West communication that immediately went out. And I'm not like in the face of an emergency, a wildfire, a flood, or whatever. It's a more defined risk, so it's easier to assess. And you're not acting with all the data. You don't have all the information. You can't make the kind of evidence-based decisions that you want to make. You just have to act. So I understand the rationale, but I think that we need to we need to circulate something to the entire community that explains what the operation process will be going forward if we want the community support and buy-in, which we need in the event that there is a true emergency that we have to face.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Smith. Any further questions or comments by council? Okay. Mr. Morrison.
I think we have an in-camera session on contract review.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to move in camera? Councilor Westphal.
I move the council move in camera for a contract review in accordance with the Cities, Towns, and Villages Act, Section 23(3).
Thank you. Seconded by Councilor Couperet. Discussion. Councilor, all in favor? Thank you. Passed unanimously.